Evolved, your home for Halo.
Welcome to Builds with Blocks, the show centered around the micro action figures and brick-based construction sets of the Halo universe. I'm your host, Colin Perkins, and I'm joined by Tom Fishenden.
Hello.
And a very special guest. We have Rick Achberger.
Hello.
Did I get that right, by the way?
You did. Very well done.
Achberger.
Mm-hmm.
Rick is the design manager for Hardlines at 343 Industries, which means he's involved in the creation and development of many of the Halo products we all love, the Mega Construx sets, and a lot more. Can you explain real quick, Rick, the Hardlines thing? That one got me. What does the Hardlines mean?
When you have consumer products, there's like two buckets. One is hard lines and one is soft lines. And so hard lines is, all of the toys, collectibles, lamps, mugs. I mean, quite literally things that are hard. And soft lines is all of the soft stuff, which is t-shirts and jackets and socks and hats and keychains and accessories.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So those are managed separately within your group. And your boss is John Friend, who we interviewed a little while back.
Mm-hmm.
Very
and in
cool.
between us, we have Tiffany O'Brien, who's the manager for the consumer products production team, which is where all of us that make this stuff live.
Awesome. Very cool. It's always good to know kind of like the inner workings, like who does what and all that sort of stuff. So this will be a really fun conversation. Rick is into this stuff. He's very integral into the decision making that goes on into what we see on shelf. And if you saw the recent reveal with Jan and the Mega Construx team, they talk about that process and how that works. So it'll be exciting to dig in here on Builds with Blocks. But before we do that, let's go around the table really quick and just see what we've been up to. It's been a little while since we recorded. Tom, what have you been doing?
So I had the wonderful idea to start 2 new Jurassic podcasts before Jurassic World Dominion comes out.
Of course.
So my spare time currently is just scheduling lots of different recording sessions and trying to make them all fit. And I actually did have to reschedule one because I forgot that we were recording this week. So I was like, I have a really important recording. I can't talk to you anymore, sorry. But beyond that, I have still been picking up bits and pieces here and there as well. So I have...
Oh, the lights are on too.
I've
You disappeared.
just disappeared completely. Yeah, it's almost as if I prepared it before we started recording by putting the lights on. But yeah, I was very happy to see this popping up on Amazon, so I grabbed that. And I've grabbed a couple of other Jazzwares bits which we've posted reviews on. I can't turn the lights off now because I've forgotten where the button is. Oh, it's the other side. So yeah, I've kind of just been working on lots of different projects like I usually am, sinking my teeth into lots of different things, and then working as well.
Yeah, working. There's that. Very nice. I'll go quick and then we'll throw it over to Rick. I'm interested to see what he's been up to. I have, let's see, my oldest birthday's coming up. He's going to turn 8 here in a couple days, and he's really been into Minecraft. So we've been in the Minecraft world, which which is great. I never got into Minecraft myself. Just didn't hit me. I was a little too old for the time. But it's great. I've often likened it to Legos, digital Legos, and there are Lego sets for Minecraft. So it's funny to like pick those up and kind of compare them to like the other Lego sets and the Mega Construx sets because it's blocky. That's the aesthetic. Like I feel like I could build this. Anyway, but the figures are pretty neat, and the whole world is cool. So he's into Minecraft, so I've been more aware of the Minecraft world recently. I have picked up. I keep looking at the floor here, and I picked up this beast.
Oh, nice.
The Havoc staff, and I'm excited to build this. I feel like once I build it, it's like the imagery. It obviously looks like the skull, but I think it's just a hard thing to take a picture of, kind of like with the Needler, I feel like once I build it, it's going to be way cooler than it just looks like it looks in the box. So I'm excited to dig into that. And then I've also been Beginning of the year, every beginning of the year, I get into a new hobby. Something new comes up. So one year it was Mega Construx. Many years ago, I've gotten into comics, in and out of comics, all this sort of stuff. So this year was the year of the board game, and so I've been getting into all sorts of board games and trying to, just explore what's out there. There's that's a whole world. And of course, because I have these little minifigures all over, I'm like, maybe I could use these in my own game. So I'm tinkering a little bit. We'll see if anything comes of it, but it'd be fun to be able to come up, even if it's just a home thing that me and my boys play, little battle war game with their Mega Constructs. It should be fun. So it's been fun to tinker with that. Rick, how about yourself? What have you been doing lately?
Well, as you mentioned, actually, Minecraft. My son is 12, and so I got into Minecraft about 5 years ago.
Nice.
Never played before, then he picked it up, and we got into it. His older sister, 17, showed him the ropes, and my wife is in on it. So we spend a lot of nights just mining stuff.
Oh, that's good.
We got a whole world that we'll just sit down and dig through, which is a bunch of fun.
That's awesome. You got your own realm and all that sort of stuff that you play through? Very cool.
Yep. And then on the hobby side, I do a lot of hobby gaming, like Warhammer and stuff like that. So I've got this terrain from a company called Mantic, which is super cool.
Oh, look at that.
That looks so cool.
Oh,
and it's all, it's a model kit you build, but you can build it modularly. So all these little pieces come off. And so it's basically like blocks.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And
you can create. So, do you create based off the game, or do you kind of create your own terrain and then play the game with what you created?
Yeah, create my own. Because it's like one time we'll battle with this, and then another time we'll can stack it all up to be a big tower, or could take it apart a bunch of little buildings, for a little neighborhood or something.
That's super cool. I love that. Yeah, I haven't gotten down that path yet. I probably is in my future, but I haven't gotten there yet.
I've been close just for the scenery. I mean, looking at that, I always find it hard to gauge the scale. But I think if you got perspective right, that would be really cool background for Mega Construx as well. So I've definitely been close to spending silly money on scenery just for photographs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're pretty close. When you take a building and a figure.
You can probably find some decent stuff. Yeah, that's really close.
Okay, yeah. Oh, Rick, my wallet is not a fan of yours right now.
You could probably find secondhand stuff for cheap. Come on. You could be good. Send it to Gabe, he'll paint it. You're golden.
Sorted.
And a new hobby begins.
That's right. Well, cool. Why don't we dive into our chat now that we've had a little bit of an update on what we've all been up to. We usually start on the kind of the past and Halo and building and all that sort of stuff. So let's start there. And Rick, maybe you can give us a little bit. Well, maybe you can tell me this first. How long have you been at 343
now? 13 years.
Okay.
I joined in 2009, a month before Reach launched.
Nice.
Oh, right. Okay. So are you one of the OGs, like right when 343 was forming?
No, I missed it by about 9 months.
Okay.
I was working with Xbox on a different team, and I was doing the manuals for the games. When you used to buy them, they had the little booklets in them.
Right.
And I did the manual for Halo Wars. Was all my graphic design, and I worked on the limited edition.
Yeah.
I did Fable 2, and then I started on some of the early ODST ideas and designs.
Nice.
And so that's how I met 343. So they were upstairs 2 floors, and I remember seeing the whiteboard where they were deciding what to call the studio.
Yeah.
There's all of these crazy ideas, and so I was kind of parallel with them. And then it was a year later, they had an opening on the consumer products team that allowed me to be like, hey, I know you guys. I love you guys. And they're like, hey, we like you, Rick. Come on.
That's perfect.
That's wicked.
And were you, so when you were doing the manual for Halo Wars, were you into the wargaming miniature stuff at the time? Oh, that'd be great. That'd have been so much fun doing that. I love that. Very cool. So tell us your history with Halo then. We'll start with Halo. Have you played since 2001? Did you come to it later?
Yeah, I have like, to be perfectly honest, an incredibly embarrassing story. I'm a big tabletop guy, not a big video gamer.
Sure.
So when the Xbox came out, picked one up, was playing Combat Evolved. I could not get off the bridge of the Pillar of Autumn, and I spent a couple hours getting extremely frustrated, and I said, no, this is lame, and I quit playing. And now, like, going back years later, there's, like, the one part where you have to, like, duck down and go under a little pipe. Yeah, I couldn't figure that out.
That was it.
That was it.
Oh, I love that.
That was what stopped me.
It's not very
Master
far,
Chief
Rick.
was stopped by a pipe. The secret weapon the Covenant never discovered.
Right. The game was turned off.
I read the Fall of Reach novel because
Okay.
I love combat science fiction and military sci-fi. So I love the book. I like the universe. I was aware of what Halo was, but it wasn't until like I started playing Halo 3 a little, and then really it was when I was working on Halo Wars that like opened it up. And being a tabletop guy, the real-time strategy game is much closer, and I prefer to play those than the shooters. Until then, it was just like, oh, we're going all in on this universe.
Yeah, very cool. So did you dive in? Did you go in and have you read all the books? You're like, you know all the lore and all this? I mean, you work for the company, but that doesn't mean you have to read the books.
I've read most of the original ones. I read Cryptum, and I think I haven't read them past there.
Okay. So but you waded through the Forerunner trilogy, which is really good stuff.
I still need to read it.
Oh yeah, have you listened to it?
I haven't, but I do have some Audible credits to spend.
There
You
you
should
go.
probably do that. Yes. Get in there. Very cool. So then you talked about, being a tabletop guy. Did that stem from, childhood with Lego, or did that kind of come later?
Yeah, Lego was a huge part of my childhood. I was a perfect age, as born in the 70s, like grew up in the 80s, played with G.I. Joe and Star Wars. Those 3 3/4 figures was perfect to be a kid in that whole wave of 80s awesome culture. And yeah, Lego has always drawn to it. Building models has always been there. So when I finally found wargaming, it was like, wait, I can like play with my arming bin and build models together.
Yeah.
And it was just a chocolate and peanut butter kind of thing.
That's perfect. Yeah, I never personally I still need to get into it, but it's always been there in the background. I always know that wargaming has existed, but then you need friends, right? You need people to play with, and all that sort of stuff. Do you play with your family, or do you play with friends?
I play with friends.
Yeah.
Mostly, I have, luckily enough, I've been working in the industry for 20 years, and so I know a bunch of other gamers, and so there's this nice like gray area between like my professional friends and then my close colleagues and then my wargaming buddies, and we all kind of blend together, work together.
Very cool.
That's really cool.
So do you do custom? So do you do custom stuff, or do you buy like the modular stuff and put it together? Do you paint? Because we've had a couple of fun guests on. Obviously, Gabe is a big into painting and customizing and whatnot.
Yep.
And then Gun Nut we had on a while back, and it was really fun to kind of dig into his creative process. Do you do that as well?
Yeah, I used to do a ton of conversions, make my own tanks for Warhammer 40K, buy 2-3 kits, pull the pieces out, mix them up. A couple of my friends were always like, I don't even know what that is, Rick. I'm like, no, it's this tank because the barrel's the same. But like everything else was like some complete. I took a tank and made it into a hovercraft, and
That's cool.
good.
like that's a little weird. Oh, it's awesome looking though.
I love that, because that is the creativity from like those initial building block moments coming through again as well there, and then that stuff that you carry forward into other things. So I know in Jurassic there's so many people who will take the figures that Mattel put out and then just create entirely different characters with them, and I'm like, how are you that creative? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff where you gotta like, look at a warthog, whether it's a block or it's a model kit, and like, how do I deconstruct this? What are the parts? What are the elements I want to come back to?
Yeah.
What do I want to rebuild? What's my vision? And with blocks, it's a lot easier because you can, just do it. Model kits, though, you got to go out and you got to paint it. But that's also the fun.
So then to talk about Mega Construx and I guess Mega now that they've rebranded. It sounds like you've been there kind of the whole time during the whole partnership. What have you? I guess what stands out? What sets stand out? What are your favorite? I see some in the background there.
Yeah.
Do you have some favorite sets that you like? New stuff, old stuff, anything that stands out to you?
A lot of stuff. When I joined the team, I wasn't working directly with Mega in the beginning. I was working with McFarlane Toys and some of the other partners.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't until 2 or 3 years later that I was the opening. Someone left the team, and I was able to be like, "Oh, hey, I would like Mega." They're like, "Hey, this is a great fit for you, then, Rick." So I've been on the team since 2012 or 2013.
Oh, okay, most of the time.
Working with Mega.
Mm-hmm.
So there's tons of stuff. That's what my little display. Some of my favorites. I love the army building.
Yeah. Those are good. They had so many of those. Mm-hmm.
You know, these sets where it's just like, oh, I'm gonna pick up like 8 of these because I want to have a whole army of Marines.
Right.
I love the buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one
good.
set I always
that made our
wish I
top
grabbed.
list. Made one of our lists.
Yeah.
Reach, I believe.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite sets. There's so many different ways you can build this around.
Yeah.
And if you see, there is a connection between.
Yeah. Oh, you must have been so happy with the results of the fan vote, eh?
Yeah. As an action figure guy, I love micro action figures.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
So, especially the army building ones, I'll go out and pick up half dozen jackals just because having the Halo Heroes painted treatment on it is sweet.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do with yours then? So speaking of figures and whatnot that you own, do you display them? Do you, play with them with your kids? Do you, what do you, are they just in your collection?
Yeah. On my work desk, I made this display where I had all of the official named characters. Mm-hmm. And it was on my desk, and it was really cool. Unfortunately, it fell apart with the last move because there's so many figures. Like, when it was like 24 figures, Halo Heroes Series 3, it was like, oh, this is not a bad display. When you get to like Series 10, and it's 100+ figures, got a little unwieldy. So I have those on my desk. I always have figures just sitting around to play with.
Yeah.
My son plays with a bunch of them. He's done Call of Duty guys versus Minecraft creepers.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Good.
That's a cool combo.
Yeah.
I like that. Very cool. Awesome. Well, let's get into... So you've been... Let's kind of get into the process, right? So you've been in the role since what? I don't know. It's almost been 10 years, right? Or maybe it's been 10 years. And take us through kind of how that goes. We've heard a little bit from Kevin and Jan's side, so the Mega side, but we haven't heard from your side how it works. It sounds like they come to you and present some ideas and work through it, but would love to hear you talk through it.
Mm-hmm. We'll just start with, we'll just pick a year. Mm-hmm. It starts off with, we will go to Mega and give them a presentation and be like, here's what the game team is doing. Here's where the Halo franchise is headed. These are going to be the story beats in any new video games. These are going to be the new novels. And they just kind of give them an update of what the next couple of years looks like for the Halo universe. And then Kevin and his team takes those ideas, and then they start thinking of what would be cool sets or what are ones they haven't done. Their business team comes out and makes the business plan and says we're going to release 8 SKUs. There's going to be ones at the 10, the 15, the 20, the 30, and the $50 sets. And so they really define
give them those price points. I forget, or do they just come up with that because they know
they do that based on
fill? Okay.
Based on their sales and what's going to work in the market and what their plans are. They know what retail buyers are interested in selling at. So they come up with that price point. And then they give that to Kevin and team. and they go through and say, oh, this would be cool as a $5 set. This would be great as a $10 set. Hey, for $50, let's do something amazing. So they come up with an initial plan. We call it a line list. And then they present that to us. And, we have we used to go to meetings. We would fly to Montreal. They would come out to Redmond. Now we do it all virtually. And we go over it and we review it and we're like, hey, this is a really cool idea. We provide comments, what about this? I love that. Could we tweak this? And that's really where a large part of my job comes in, is because I know Halo, and working with Kevin and their team that also knows Halo, is just real good to just sit back and, be like a couple of fans and be like, okay, what do we want to make? Yeah. And, here's some ideas, and like, oh, I love that idea, but what if you put this character in it, or you tweak it? So it's a real collaborative between both sides to come up with a line list. I then take it and get it officially approved internally. I talk to our franchise teams and to our art directors and other key stakeholders in the studio, and everybody says like, hey, this is great, oh, hey, what if we did this character instead? Like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. And then we have like,
do you have to pitch them, or do you set those meetings up? Are you just walking, when we used to walk around the office, or is it like an official, like, hey, this is the meeting to decide this thing?
Yeah. Okay. It's I take the PowerPoint documents that Kevin and team puts together. I take those and then streamline them a little bit, and then we have a formal presentation where it's a conference call, and I go through like, okay, here's what they're going to do for Halo Heroes. Yep. Okay, here's what they're going to do for $10 sets. Here's what they're going to do for the $20 set. And it's, it'll be like a warthog with these two characters and maybe this side build. And so we go through all of that and take any notes. And then I send those notes back to Kevin, and we talk about it and be like, okay, this is good. We can't do this. What about this? And, it's just a real nice back and forth collaborative effort.
It's really nice hearing how involved it is on all fronts, actually, because I think for, especially for the game teams as well, and the art directors and everything like that, I know that obviously for them a lot of time and energy and passion goes into getting that visual look, so actually then getting to feedback on a physical interpretation of that idea that they've created must be really fun for them as well.
Yeah, and a lot of them are collectors too for, toys or statues or whatever, and they love it, and they're like, oh, wait. And, they get, like, to be little fans who are like, oh, wait, my creation is going to be an action figure? Oh!
Right.
See, what this is telling me is the development process is basically a really long version of one of our podcasts. I love it.
Yeah, and then once we get the line list approved, we're all set. We record that as the plan of record, and then I go get the assets. And so I go onto our network and pull like the 3D from here, reference images from there, hop in the game if I need to take some images. We have an asset wrangler on our team that does the 3D stuff, and they're incredible to work with too. And they'll be like, okay, here's the new armor core. Can you make the OBJ 3D files and turnarounds and images? And then I package all of that stuff up and I send it over to Kevin. And then his team downloads it. They do a first pass on the sculpting. They send that over, and then I review that and I put the reference and their sculpt, and I look at it, and it's like, okay, this rivet's off, this bolt's off, this looks good, hey, this looks great.
Okay, so you have a say. Obviously, they are wanting to put in as much detail in as possible, but you're kind of like double checking and making sure there's enough to identify certain things.
Yep, and make sure it's correct.
Right.
It's like if you're doing Halo 2 Master Chief, he's got the 3 dots on the back of his glove. If you're doing Halo 2 Master Chief is 3 dots. Halo 3 Master Chief is 5 dots. And so it's just some of that, super subtle stuff. You don't see that on a Mega figure because the hands are so small, but
for like Jazzware's the Spartan collection, that's where you then look at that scaled up detail as well. Yeah,
and so we get all of that. We have a meeting with all the art directors and the franchise team once a week, and we show them all the projects that we're working on and get it in front of them so they can look at it. It was really important when Infinite was in develop to make sure that we were getting the latest and greatest information, because sometimes they'd be like, oh, wait a sec, we changed those emissive lights. They're actually red now instead of yellow. And they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll make that note, send it over to Mega. They'll make the correction.
Okay, cool. So you have a lot of eyeballs on this thing, making sure that things are checked. Being checked. So I'm going to ask a weird question, and you don't have to answer it, but so how difficult with all of the delay stuff was it to make sure, like, did you have to go back and forth and say, oh, wait, we can't do that anymore because we're not good? Like, was that a big... I mean, from our perspective, it probably was, but I don't know how it was in reality. Yeah,
we were living it real time. It certainly was not planned.
Yeah.
It was unexpected. The wonderful thing is that both internally, the studio rallied, realized what needed to be done, and because the goal is to make the best possible game. They're like, okay, we need to do this to make the best game. And then we go to Mega and say, hey, this is happening, and Mega is super cool and super supportive, and they're like, we want it to be the best game possible too. And so then we work with them and we're like, okay, how can we shift this? Can we nudge this? What can we do here? And we have such a great working relationship with them, and ultimately everybody just wants to make the coolest thing for the fans.
Right.
There's no, mercenary, oh, this has to be out because we need to make money on it. It's like, no, okay, what is the coolest thing? Let's be authentic to the fans. And that's one of the reasons I love working for 343 and with companies like Mega, is that everything is really fan-centric. And we do care about what the products are and what we're making, and ensuring that everything is, as true as it can be. And, it's not just money grabs.
Yeah. I think that really shines through. And Colin, I'm going to apologize if I'm stealing a question from later, because I know I wrote them, but I can't remember what it is. But I think that really shines through, especially in that panel that obviously we mentioned, where you see all of these sets that fans have been requesting, and that just shows that you guys are really listening to that and engaging with that. I mean, I know for me, for example, the 20-in-1 Scorpion was really hard to get, so then seeing that new version that's so close to that, giving me a chance to get that, but then also having a really cool figure in the form of Stone as well, I'm just like, that's perfect, you guys know exactly what I want. So I think that really does shine through.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun to read people's comments and be like, hey! And they're like, hey, I think they should do this. We'll be like, oh, can't say that. Come back next year.
Right.
I will say, you may have come across back in my heyday when, I don't know if you ever saw any platforms like the Blocks forums or Spartan Blocks. They were very, very old school, but I used to always just write lists and lists of set ideas on them. And I feel like at some point you've probably just stumbled across them and be like, what is he doing?
Yeah, it's fun. We'll make a list, for Jazzwares or for Mega or for whoever. We plan that stuff out and be like, okay, here's what our ideas are. We follow the fans a little bit, so we, get some input from there and ideas. And we know fans have been asking for this for a long time. And a lot of times it just kind of verifies that what we're thinking, we're on the right track.
Yeah.
When we were talking to Gabe at that reveal before the show, he's like, well, I want to see this, this, and this. And it's like, all right, that's what we have for you.
That's perfect. Well, and so, how do you distill the feedback that isn't always the best feedback, right? So I feel like that's part of it, is listening to the fans. And it sounds like you guys are dedicated to listening to the fans, which is great. But if I put myself in your guys' shoes, specifically 343, it's not always the nicest feedback. So do you have either the thick skin, or you just read it? Because I saw an interview with Joseph Staten, where he just he looks at the feedback and he kind of pulls out what they're trying to say. He doesn't take any offense to the stuff.
Yeah. You need a thick skin. You need to realize fundamentally everybody's saying stuff because they care, and they're passionate about it. And so, it's like really special that like people care that much that they want to put that much feeling into it. So that almost all of it comes from a place of love. There are a few haters out there that just like to be trolls,
Sure.
but for the most part, it's fans that they love it so much. And when you have a thing like Halo that's 20 years old and has novels and comics and games and a bunch of different
TV
stuff.
show now.
Right, soon.
Yep, couple of weeks. Well, there's like so much to Halo. Everybody takes a little part of it, and they think like their part's their favorite, what they want to see, what's the best. And so you really try to step back, get the bird's eye view. What is the common theme here? What is everybody trying to say? What are the big picture ideas? If a lot of people are saying like, oh, we don't think the warthog should be green anymore, you're like, okay, well, let's explore that. Let's look into that. Let's see what we can do there.
Yep. Very cool. That's just good to hear. I mean, we've heard it from other people that work on the brand and the brand themselves that you guys do listen to the fans. But I always there's always mental health involved too. I'm just like, I'm looking at some of these conversations like, oh boy, can people just tone it down a bit, please?
Yeah. I'll skim the comments. You pick up kind of the best stuff. When stuff starts to go south or somewhere, it's like, okay, there'll be another one. I follow in my personal Facebook, I've, a couple different fan communities, and there is that weird line between, I'm now home from work and I'm just like relaxing in bed, but I want to, what are the fans out there saying? Just because I'm still part of the community. And so, trying to keep tabs, see what people are still interested in, what the community's talking about. And so you're, stand back and take a look at it and be a part of it.
I think that's the thing that sort of good community engagement boils down to as well, is actually obviously having that like 9 till 5 or whatever period, but then still being willing to have your finger on the pulse every now and then as well, to just see what is the general thing that's going on when I'm maybe not here pushing everything out and it's just these fans on their own. What are they talking about, and what are the things that are coming up repeatedly, that sort of stuff as well.
How does it work with in working for the company that makes the cool thing that we all love? How does it work with there's obviously community feedback, but then there's spoilers, right? Like you don't want all the things that are going on, but you have to bite your lip until a certain point in time. Like how has that been difficult? Have you gotten just used to that at this point?
Yeah, it's always tricky. You're always careful with what you say. Like pause, think through the answers. It's not very difficult because just our 343 studio culture is very open and very fan oriented, and so you just kind of pick up what you can say, what you can't say. And a lot of it is easy because it's honest stuff that you believe in too. So it's not like I'm like, oh, here's the corporate line that you must repeat back and be like, rah, rah, rah. It's like, no, actually, I understand that. I get that. I agree with that. So it's easy. Spoilers are tricky because, you always got to pause and think like, okay, what's in the future? Can I tell you about this? Has this been public? What has been on Waypoint? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I always go back and like when something new gets posted on Waypoint, like I go back and make sure to read it and be like, okay, that this is okay, this is okay, this is okay.
Yeah, and we deal, because we're a lore podcast also on top of the Builds with Blocks thing, so we deal with spoilers too. We don't want to ruin it for our listeners and our viewers, right? So obviously we've all played the games and read the books, but there'll be a point where we're like, well, if this person hasn't read this book, then maybe we don't want to talk about this. So we have often catch ourselves like we want, because there's certain key moments in certain things where we want those people to come across that themselves. So it's got to be tough. And you guys are so far ahead now, so what's going on. What are you working on right now? Are you working on 2024 now?
We'll start 2024 this summer.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're in the midst of 23 is planned, and we're producing it. So I'm gathering assets. We're looking at submissions. We're reviewing all of that stuff. Planning will start sometime this summer.
Yeah, great. That's exciting. I'm sure you got some good stuff up your sleeve. So, so we have a kind of a list of questions here that we could probably bounce back and forth. Tom, I'll let you jump in at some point here.
Yeah, sure.
But one sticks out here is, again, you've been working on the brand for a while, and Mega specifically. What is there a set that stands out that you're just super happy that you were able to make real for people?
I think the Falcon, the one that's coming up.
Yeah, the new one.
It was originally titled Winter Contingency, so that's how I think of it in my head.
Yeah, we know. We saw like the early listing.
I love Reach. That's my favorite title. That was like I said when I joined the studio, so I played a whole lot of Reach. I like the Noble Team characters. It really fits that more military background, less space opera. So I totally loved it. And being able to offer the Falcon, which is just a sweet looking vehicle, and here's all of Noble Team together, and if you could only buy one set, this is the one set you'd want to have.
Yeah. I think it is cool as well, because obviously this set builds on the feedback from the last round in 2011, where it's now got the adjusted dimensions, so all of the figures fit in properly as well. So again, it's circling back to that, bringing something cool back, but also listening to the feedback on it and then including that, so it's a better iteration of what's come beforehand as well. Man, I need that set now.
I'm super excited for the elephant.
Oh yeah,
because I love the original elephant. I love just those big pink kind of stuff. So seeing how far Mega has come over the last 10 years, and watching how their builds have evolved, and the better techniques and the engineering and stuff, and seeing how much more sophisticated stuff is, I love that idea of going back to such a big, Halo core vehicle and re-examining it.
Well, it's got to be great for you to see the evolution of the quality of their product, right? Because the quality of their product was what it was in the early days, and they've learned a lot and they've gotten a lot better. And I'm sure technologies and all that sort of stuff have changed, but to where things are today, that's got to be great for validation for you guys to stick with that partnership and continue on instead of go into a competitor, all that stuff.
Yeah, we worked closely with Mega. Mega was doing their own stuff, and everybody wants to do better and do right by the fans, like I've said. And so it was just kind of a natural process of okay, this isn't good enough. How can we do it a little better? What can we step up? What can we change to make that much cooler? My favorite is the micro action figures. The original figures, all the armor was on, and then one day the Mega team came out. I was visiting Montreal, and the Mega team was like, we have something special to show you in this meeting. And so they show it, and they talk about how, and the armor comes off, and you can switch it. I was just like, oh,
yeah.
And it was just so amazing to talk about that. And then, as an old G.I. Joe Star Wars figure, this is just sweet to be able to go buy. Here's your action figure. It's at a reasonable price. It's got all of your stuff. It's got the high deco. It's so incredible. So I love that. And then they keep pushing it. And because first it was Spartans, and then it was Brutes, and then it was Elites. And, now you've got where it's not all four-fingered hands. You're starting to get the different hands with the different number of fingers on it. You're just like, oh.
Well, as a newer collector, it makes me and again, I do like the old stuff, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to go back and get all of that old stuff, because the newer stuff has all those additional details that I'm sure fans have been wanting forever, but now they're here.
Yep.
Real quick question, I'll throw it to Tom. So how do you deal from your perspective with the kind of the scarcity issue that we've had over the last few years? People want to buy the stuff, but then they can't buy the stuff. I don't know if you guys play any part in that, but can you provide any perspective on your end? I'm sure you've seen that conversation online from fans and things like that.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex.
Yep.
Because we're partners with Mega, we don't control Mega. And then Mega's part of Mattel. And so it's just, there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of people. Mattel is a huge global company. They have, sales for the US. They have sales for the rest of the world. Retailers come into it. Your buyers for all the different distributors, for the different big box stores. And so it's just this incredibly complex series of relationships that you work through. We have a couple people on our team that specialize in it who are talking to the retailers all the time and saying, hey, here's this, here's that. We're constantly going and being like, hey, here's what's new with Halo. Here's why Halo's awesome. We partner with our partners, like Mega Bloks. If they have a presentation, we can pop in for a little bit. We can share a deck with them that shows the stuff. And so it's really complex in a global community. It's not as simple as like, we're going to make 400 of these and ship them out to 300 cities. And so we're always working on it. We do always hear the feedback. We go back, we talk about it. Okay, what can we do here? What are some other strategies? What can we do?
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's just good for our fans to hear that it's not as simple as just make more, right? Like there's more to it than just that, right?
Yeah. And you have so many levels between us and the manufacturers and the buyers and the distributors. And then these last 2 years, you throw in logistics into all of that with, that's leaving the factory, but it doesn't have a shipping container. And so there's going to be a 2-month delay waiting for that. And so it's super complex.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, Tom. You're up.
Cool. Okay, right. I'm going to take this into a much more fun realm that's not thinking about logistics. And this is a question that I've been itching to ask you, Rick, and it might be one that you can't say too much around. But I've been around in the community for a while. So I remember a few things from back in the day. Like iTunes has just randomly opened, but we will ignore that. Like a certain Valhalla prototype that popped up one year. So I just wanted to ask you if there's anything you can talk about that you would potentially like to revisit in the future. So obviously it's not necessarily things that will definitely get made, but is there anything for you personally that didn't quite make the cut that you'd like the chance to come back to?
I think Valhalla's a good one. That's a tricky question. What else did I want to see?
I promised it would be a good one.
I know. I think the Gravemind is a personal favorite for Kevin and I. Especially with what Mega has been doing recently. With their other brands like Pokemon, and they're doing like those buildable figures, and to have like
the Xenomorph Queen.
Yeah, see, exactly. I think they could do it great. But, that's just one of the personal, we always talk about it. And this is where I say it's a collaborative process, because Kevin and I are like, oh, let's do the Gravemind! And then, there's all of the reasons why.
Well, you
and it's not,
Gravemind.
it's not reasons why, like, the Gravemind isn't a good idea. It's more of about, here's stuff that's better.
Yeah.
And so it's be like, okay, so, we could do the Gravemind, or we could do Noble Team on a Falcon. You're like, well, the Gravemind is awesome, but it's kind of niche, and there's, 3 of us that would like it, but, I really love Noble Team.
And now you're making the fans choose, right? Like, here's the cool things we could do, you guys decide.
And actually, that's a great point, because that is a lot of what our collaborative process is like that, where Kevin will come up and be like, here's 4 great ideas. We want to do this, this, and this. Well, we can only do one of them. Well, which one do we want to do?
Yeah.
And everyone has its good point, and they'll be like, okay, well, we can't do that this season. How about if we hold that until next season?
Right.
We're like, let's come back and revisit this one. And so, like, having that fan vote really does show you what it's like behind the curtain. I mean, you got to make these tough decisions when you're like, all 4 of these sets are awesome, and I can only have one?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I was gonna So on that sort of train of thought, do the fans ever surprise you with what they choose? Because I remember back when the first fan vote happened for the subline, a lot of people were shocked that the NMPD won that, and I can remember that clear as day. People were like, "What? The police lines won?" So have you ever had any of those kinds of surprises from fans as well?
Yeah, I honestly didn't expect the Spartan Haunted to win the last 3 votes.
Yeah, I think we were the same.
Yeah, I was hoping for the Thrall Slayer because that's a cool brute.
He's cool.
But having the Elite, like with the new armor and stuff on that, it'd be like, oh, okay, fans love the Flood. It's gonna be this one. It's gonna be, this is where I'm betting. And there's like, no, it came out the Haunted. I'm like, oh, okay. All right.
Poor CQB. Yeah. Poor CQB.
Nobody loves the CQB.
One day.
Somebody had to be fourth in that race.
I mean, I love my Gen 1 CQB. It's in a box somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, you really love it. It's in a box.
So this has flowed so nice and naturally. It's almost as if I planned it and I didn't. But on the subject of figures then as well, specifically, so obviously I feel like a favourite set, you kind of get everything in one. So you can think about your figures, your build, all of that. It's a lot harder just choosing a favourite character that Mega's done. And obviously it's even harder this year because we finally got Lord Hood, which a lot of people have wanted. Obviously Jegger Adomni, who a lot of people have asked for as well. So do you have a favourite character that Mega have made at this point, or a couple of favourites? And I'm interested to see who they would be. It's a hard question. I know you're an action figure guy.
Well, I think my favourite is going to be Noble Team, and I can't narrow it down to one, but it's just like, I love Reach so much, and that's my favorite Halo, and so having those characters, that's actually what I have on my desk underneath my monitor, is all of the Noble Team together.
That's so cool.
I also love the Marines. I love the army building.
No, that's a really strong choice. I'll give it back to you now if you want, Colin. I feel like I could keep going, but I'm happy.
Well, I was going to play off that. So
reins.
who's your guy? Are you a George guy? Who's the Noble Team favorite?
I think June or Emil.
Yeah.
I love, like, from a gameplay, like, I love the June on that mission where you're just sneaking and sniping.
Yeah.
That's my way I like playing shooters, and so, like, I really love Halo 3 ODST for that same, because there's that, like, sneaky element. You're not just Rambo. I don't have the twitch to, be a pro player and go take everybody on. So sniping from a distance, I really like June. But Emil looks like a badass. I mean, when he's carved the skull onto his EVA helmet, that's pretty cool too.
I've got to jump in here with a pitch that I think both you and Kevin will approve of, Rick. So you like the Gravemind, right? So that's some kind of weird sort of animalistic design. You like the level Nightfall that June's on. Why not do one of the Coulter beasts that they have the fight with later in the mission?
Right.
That's my pitch. I'm leaving it there. Just gonna let it sink in.
That would be a cool one. Yeah.
I could see your brain there thinking of a million reasons why it wouldn't work.
Well,
Talk about niche, eh?
Right.
Yeah, we joke about doing a MOA every now and then.
That
and,
would be good.
it's cool. That kind of like, at some time the stars will align and we'll be able to do it.
Yeah. Make it a 2-in-1 build so it can transform into a MOA burger.
You can just pull a little burger out of the...
Yeah. And that's, when you get to line planning, it's really tricky because there is so much great stuff in Halo.
Yeah.
So, like, it's difficult to choose what figures do we want to put in what line. And we can't do, like, all of the figures. Like, if we do all of Noble Team this year, what are we going to do next year? Like, No Name Marine, third from the left? Well, that doesn't make a compelling set.
Right.
And so we always got to look at, like, how many releases are you going to do? Like, for action figures with Jazzwares, we sat down with them and we kind of pencil out the 2 or 3 years in general, be like, okay, you're going to be making toys for 3 years. You're going to do multiple releases per year. We're going to want A characters, B characters. How do we pace that out? And then you take that and then you're like, okay, now let's sprinkle in, beats. Infinite is going to drop here. 20th anniversary is happening here. How do we now align these? And then while you're doing all of that, you also want each individual line to tell a story.
Yeah.
And so you just don't randomly pick, because otherwise you'd end up with, here's Noble Team, but here's Halo 2 Jackals. Like, Noble Team didn't fight them. Like, those don't quite mesh. And so you got to go back and be like, okay, if we're doing, a lot of reach here, we're like, okay, well, let's pull in a skirmisher then instead of the Jackal, and we'll push the Jackal out until we get to, like, a Halo 2 Sergeant Johnson. And so it just is like this huge logic puzzle.
Yeah. And are you the owner of that puzzle? I heard there was a spreadsheet involved that is giant.
Yeah, I've got a lot of it. And it's always tricky, and it's always changing, and I'm the keeper of it, but I don't get the last say. It's, again, one of those collaborative, like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I talk to Jeff Easterling. He's always in the loop on that to make sure that I've got all my facts right. But yeah, it's a crazy, fun logic puzzle. And the trick is that there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
Sure.
When you look at it and you're like, okay. And so it's not like math where you could be like, oh, well, of course the answer is 5, and then everybody agrees and you go forward with it. There's always a little bit of artistry, a little bit of subtle changes, a little things that could be a little bit different. They'd be like, well, maybe we could have done this differently.
Yeah.
Well, so one of Matt's favorite things is like the mashup. So you have a set and it's like, there's like one element that's not like actually from Halo Infinite or something like that. Like, I'm sure you consider that, right? You kind of just described how that works. So you are aware that like with Fred, like Fred shows up in the chopper. Fred's not in Infinite. But we haven't had Fred, so it makes sense to give us Fred along with Escharum in the chopper, right? Like, that was a cool set.
Yep. And Fred, is from Shadows of Reach. So he's in that time frame.
Yeah, good point.
Mega, early on, when they weren't doing named characters and it was just Halo, they could mix and match that stuff. And you were like, oh, it's just Halo. And as they've got more and more tied to a game, and like now they're doing Infinite, they're looking for that. They're doing the Universe line. And then that means like that freedom evaporates a little bit. And we got to like start being like, okay, if you're going to label this an Infinite set, then we need to make sure that it's this or this. And then where can you expand that and be like, well, because you don't want to limit yourself to only replicating what's in the game, because you want to be able to have Fred and you want to be able to have the chopper with Escharum.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you could conceivably, would this logically could this happen off camera? Yes. Okay, then we could make that a set.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting as well, because obviously with that consideration, you probably then have to think about how people are going to perceive that as well. Because I can remember that I shouted at a lot of people during Infinite Cycle saying, it's a toy, it doesn't mean that this is in the game, just be mindful of that.
Are you talking about the lock helmet?
Yeah.
There's no yellow triangle. I cannot confirm that is a lock helmet. That is strictly a hunter.
Right.
Yep. But like, I even saw a video that had the Nightfall version of Locke from the Universe Heroes, and they're like, oh, it's Commando Locke after his armor's been taken off, and I'm like, no, it's just from Nightfall. Don't read into it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about Halo Universe? Was that your idea? Was that Kevin and Mega's team's idea? Was that a collaboration? Is it something you guys been talking about for a while?
It came from Mega, originally. Like, we talked about Halo Heroes is awesome, and we love the detail and the named characters. And so I think, like, I was, talking one time about, like, how do we put named characters into vehicles? and how do we make a Halo Heroes building set? And then they come back and they're like, they look at it and be like, well, we can do two sides of the line, where one is timely content that's going to be whatever's new, if it's Halo Infinite or whatever, and then the other one is the universe, where we're looking back at favorite moments in time to really let people be like, oh, I love that specific moment and I love that specific moment, and to get that nostalgia. So that way we get there's a balance of the infinite timely sets for people who want to what's new and hot right now, and then also there's sets for those longtime collectors.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe just things that haven't, as you move to the new game, and I again, as I am kind of a middle newish or collector, there's things that like, ooh, I like this is from Halo 4, but there was never one of these things from Halo 4, so it gives you guys the chance to go back and give like the vote for the Warden. Like I thought the Warden was that was my choice, and the fact that we have that chief that's back there that stands up, like that kind of exists, and I could create my own custom, but I also want the official one, right? Like it would be awesome to have the official Warden. So it's awesome to know that like could still be a possibility down the road. Tom,
I think it's cool. I was just going to say it's cool because it feeds into that sense of legacy. And I think for me, as somebody who's been collecting for a while as well, it's really nice to have the chance to revisit sets, because actually a lot of the sets, especially from my early days, this is going to be painful, Rick. I'm 22. So when I first started collecting, I wasn't the most astute collector, and a lot of my sets were in a conservatory. So my Scarab, for example, is slightly sun-bleached. So having the chance to like go back and get sets that might have existed before but in a slightly new flavour, and sort of update what I've got on display so it's the more current version, is really exciting for me, I find. And it is really nice, like even with figures, when you get that, say, like slight additional detail of a logo that wasn't there before, then replacing that old version is really satisfying for me because it keeps that feeling current as well.
I really love the Aerial Ambush set, which was the remake of the original set, because I got those original first wave when they came out with the Scorpion and the Warthog and the Aerial Ambush and stuff, and I'm like, oh, these are super cool. And I was doing Halo Wars, and like I love the Sparrowhawk, and so it's just so sweet. And then to be like, okay, let's come back 10 years later, see how we've progressed, let's now redo this set. It's amazing.
I think it's really nice for Mega as well, because it acts as that sort of like almost in-hand portfolio, doesn't it? If this is what our building techniques used to be, this is what they are now, and it's that really cool juxtaposition you get as well. I really enjoy it. Maybe I'm weird. I just enjoy going through and seeing, oh, that's a cool building technique. I've not seen that before. It's really fun, like, discovering those things.
Yeah, and there's so much more, right? Like, there's engineers that we could get. You talked about the Gravemind. Like, there's the Halo universe is so vast that there's always
again, there's
to
a
go back
TV
into.
show coming.
Exactly. Maybe there's some TV show stuff that could happen. Exactly. Yeah. So we're a lot to look forward to, is what it sounds like. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything you can, I don't know, give us a little preview of or tease, or is that it's probably all on wrap? So you've already given us your big teaser.
Was there a knock at the door again?
I think Oni's coming after me.
Right, exactly.
No, you guys, that reveal video, is the latest and greatest of the hot stuff coming out. It's sweet stuff. That's probably, one of my most favorite lines to work on. It's just really strong. Everything in it is a sweet set. There's really not much I can say.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I can tell you everything, but then I won't be working there tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's not a bad thing. Not a good thing.
So you work on Mega, and I think you told us at the beginning a little bit. So what other stuff? You said the Hardline stuff. So what? So Jazzwares is in the mix there. What else is in the mix for stuff? That
1,000 Toys. High-end Japanese action figures. So I work with them on those. Funko all the
Nice.
Funko Pops.
The Funkos, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doing those. EXG Exquisite Game Limited does the cable guys that are the fun little Master Chief that holds your controller in your phone. Mm-hmm. Working with those. Nerf on all the Nerf blasters.
Yeah, okay.
That's been one of my favorite lines. I just want to say the fact that, so obviously Boomco came before, and I remember with that we had obviously the Magnum, the SMG, but it was always smaller blasters. Mm-hmm. So then leading with the like near to full size AR, I just lost my mind. Like that sits in the corner of my room, and I just pick it up every now and then and run around my house with it.
Yep.
My parents love it when I do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we're those, and then also some of the other stuff, the Swarovski crystals.
Yeah.
That marketing did. Those passed through my desk, and I got to do some dev passes on it and show it with the art directors to make sure, it was looking how we wanted it to look. And so it's really, anything that's hard.
Yep.
If you can knock on it and make a sound, then it's probably coming over my desk.
Nice. And Halo board game when?
Not soon enough.
I know. We need one. Somebody. We need to make that happen. Cool. Well, this has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Any final thoughts, Tom, or anything?
Thanks for doing this. It's so awesome because I always harken on about it, but so much of what I do now has really stemmed from Halo and being really into those lines when I was growing up. So it's really special to me now getting to actually talk to the people who have worked on those things and made it possible. And it's really awesome seeing that you're all just as into this as we are. That makes it really special as well.
Yep.
So thanks for making it possible.
Oh,
yeah,
you're welcome. And thank you for, being the dedicated fans and interested in it, because without y'all, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
I'd have to go work for some insurance company.
Yeah, exactly. She'll have a job, just not a cool job that you
not
have.
a fun job. Yeah.
So any community shout-outs or anything? Rick, is there any community members or any cool stuff that you've seen that comes to mind? We always talk about our friend of the show, Brickman, doing the big cool stuff, but are there any smaller creators that you've seen out there? Or Tom, have you seen anything recently?
I can.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the names now because I didn't anticipate this question. Check my facts.
I threw it on you. Sorry about that.
The toy animations that I've seen over the last year. The folks that are doing the toymations are absolutely
the domain
outstanding.
Yeah. His community is awesome with that, Simon. Yep.
Yeah. We'll take those and we'll pass those around the office. It's like, oh, have you seen this? It's so cool.
That's cool to hear.
I'm just gonna shout out the mega forums in general because I went through a hiatus where I wasn't posting as much toy photography, and I'm slowly getting back into it. And there are some really cool photographers over there, like some really creative stuff, and people using different set pieces, different natural locations and things in ways that I wouldn't imagine. So there's some really cool stuff on there at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much goodness, and then Halo's still fresh, we hadn't had a Halo, but I was always so surprised at how much the community is constantly, put out creative stuff, right? It's so cool. And this community specifically is always coming up with something new, and people, wanting to express themselves with their toys, and it's just awesome.
Yeah. The other one that's super impressive are the folks who repaint the Jazzwares toys. It's not blocks, but the people that take that Mantis and then totally do that top-down model finish, all the weathering, rusty little bits, and they photograph it. Those the modeler in me is sees those. It's so amazing the work that they've done.
That's people like More Shots. I know he does a really good job with all of his repaints and his photography. That's really cool. Yeah.
It's amazing stuff.
Some talented folks out there, and we appreciate you guys being here and watching along with us and chatting with Rick. So that'll do it for the show. Thanks for watching Build with Blocks, not building Build the Blocks. If you like the show, feel free to support Podcast Evolved on Patreon. Until next time, evolved.
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 Yeah.